Good afternoon, everyone. We would like to call to order the meeting of the Indiana Commission for Higher Education. And Sarah, thank you for agreeing to do our roll call. If you could call the roll, please.
Absolutely. Gerald Bepko, Dennis Bland,
Present.
John Costas, Susana Duarte de Suarez, Judd Fisher,
Present.
Lisa Hirschman, present, Alan Hubbard,
Here.
Chris Lamoth, Chris Murphy,
Chris is here.
Dan Peterson, John Pop,
Here.
Karen Whitehouse. Present.
And Jerry is on the line. Jerry, you are present?
Are you connected? He's going to be present.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now, we would like to hear from the wonderful Chancellor at Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis, IUPUI, Chancellor Charles Bands. If you would come and welcome us, please. Thank you very much for hosting us today.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Chairman Bland. Thank you, Commissioners, for being here and for sharing your lunch with me earlier. Thank you very much. IUPUI is always pleased to have you on campus. It's one of the ways we get to be known by you, and I hope you get a sense of pride and accomplishment and what the campus and these students, faculty, and staff have done to try and enhance the success of students in Indiana and of the state of Indiana. We have 30,000 plus students. We each year so far have always had the most Hoosier students of any campus in the state of Indiana, four-year institution, and as a result, we believe it's our responsibility to help them be successful and help this state be successful. So thanks for being here. I hope you have a productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for all your insights regarding the latest changes and improvements at IUPUI, which you shared during lunch, and continued success.
Thank you.
Now, I will provide quick chairman's remarks, and then I'll turn it over to our Commissioner Lubbers, for commissioner's remarks. And I just want to emphasize that from the Commission for Higher Education standpoint, in terms of the commissioners, we have an interest in continuing to work along with Commissioner Lubbers in advancing the next iteration of our strategic plan. So you just look forward to more information coming regarding our new strategic plan. I also want to emphasize our continued efforts and desires to continue to build public will around trying to build a culture of academic readiness and trying to build a deep aspiration throughout the state of Indiana for academics and learning and college. And so we'll continue on those fronts. And in that vein, I also just want to remind everyone about the upcoming state of higher education, and we look forward to Teresa's remarks. I know she'll share more about that, but we look forward to that taking place, and I think that's February 23rd. So we look forward to that presentation at the State House. And then I just want to continue to emphasize and just put a lens on and a focus on the issue of behavior, conduct on our campuses, particularly as it pertains to sexual assault and abuse, but also the issue of alcoholism and student behavior. I just think it's an important issue that we should continue to emphasize. And then finally, I just want to express thanks and appreciation to the different universities for all the wonderful efforts that we read about throughout the course of a week and throughout the course of a month. Between commission meetings, we see all the great successes that are taking place on our respective campuses. And that concludes my remarks, and now I'll turn it over to Teresa for commissioner's remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to make sure if we can get Jerry Bepko on here with us. We seem to have a challenge a little bit with the system, but we're working on it. So Jerry, let us know, or somebody let us know if Jerry's on there. Thank you. I just have a couple of comments that I wanted to make as a part of the Commissioner's report. starting off with a discussion that we really had this morning, which is that it's clear that the month of January saw an understandable increase in our workload as a staff as the General Assembly reconvened again. The governor delivered his State of the State on the 13th, and then subsequently he presented his budget. We've presented the budget that you approved to the Ways and Means Committee, and we'll be presenting again when the bill moves to the Senate for consideration as well. As you may recall, during the last session, there was a bill that required an examination of the high school diplomas. And this came about, it started with the discussion about the career and technical education, but it evolved into a much bigger discussion of asking us to evaluate high school diplomas for college and career readiness and for some other issues as well. I co-chair the Core 40 subcommittee with Superintendent of Public Instruction Glenda Ritz, and we have been working really since last June. The good news is that the legislature gave us a little more time to work on this, but we will be required to make our recommendations for the state board's consideration, and they need to act by late fall. I mention this to you today because the intention right now is to bring to the Commission for Higher Education at our August meeting. We don't meet in July, but at our August meeting, what those recommendations will be to change the high school diplomas, and ask that you weigh in on those to measure college and career readiness. I would mention that among the considerations that we have right now would be new math pathways. What we know is that many of our students who aren't succeeding, either at our community college or other colleges as well, aren't because of math. And so we're looking at the redesign of math to preserve academic rigor, but to actually have math pathways. We're also considering, right now we have a general diploma, a Core 40 diploma, and an academic honors diploma, and a technical honors diploma. We're looking at several items, including perhaps one diploma with two pathways toward proficiency, a possible, but not determination yet, elimination of the general high school diploma. The reason we talk about doing that is because we think if we get the math pathways figured out, that will take care of those who are currently getting the general high school diploma in great measure. We're also talking about how to improve the value of the high school transcript so that employers actually would pay attention to the transcript, and basic ways to incorporate financial literacy and college and career preparation, as well as work-based learning. So I'll continue to bring you up to date on that because there's a lot of work happening. Jason Bierce on our staff is really sort of spearheading this work along with me on this, and but at some point you will be asked to weigh in on whether you think these diplomas actually are good measures of college and career readiness. Late January, on a very snowy day, I was asked to address a convening of 3 New England states, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. Got out just before 24 inches of snow dropped on the ground, but the reason we were asked was to really highlight Indiana's attainment goal and our strategic plan. I mean, it's clear when you travel to other states that every state's unique culture and their leadership and their governance makes a difference in terms of how they do higher ed. But it's also abundantly clear that every state is working toward this goal of 60% of their citizens having some sort of quality credential beyond high school. I think the work that this commission has done to be committed to a strategic plan, starting with Chris Murphy as the only one on the commission at this point who would have been involved with the early strategic plan in 2008, but then our evolution in 2012 and the work we're doing now that Chairman Bland talked about, together with the fact that we set this attainment goal, the Career Council, represented by the executive branch of government and the legislative branch of government, have bought into the 60% goal too. And I think it really puts us in a better effort to get statewide buy-in for that goal. And so I mentioned this to you because as we continue to have a special focus on student success, I think that has really guided our work toward the attainment goal as well. Last week I had the opportunity, I think it was last week, to travel with Steve Braun, who is the new commissioner for the Department of Workforce Development, to announce the Hoosier Hot 50 jobs. We do this every 2 years. It was first introduced, I believe, in 2006 or 7. And I think it's interesting to look at a couple of the highlights of the list for this year. There were 18 new jobs out of 50, which is significant. in the Who's Your Hot 50 since its inception, less than 10 years ago, and I think a lot of those new jobs have come about even in the last 2 years. Nearly 90%, the way that they determined these hot jobs is they had to also be high-wage, high-demand jobs. So nearly 90% of the careers that were listed required some type of post-secondary education. All required at least a high school diploma or equivalency and on-the-job training. The majority of the jobs were in STEM-related fields, and manufacturing and healthcare professions accounted for nearly half of the list. So I think when we talk, as we did this morning, about the alignment between education and the workforce and career opportunities, this work should inform our work as well. And then you already mentioned, I was just going to mention that I hope that everyone will have an opportunity to attend the State of Higher Education address when we will highlight some of these issues in greater depth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for your report. And I just want to take a moment and just appreciate the entire Commission for Higher Education staff. And lest it seem a little bit too patronizing, you have to appreciate the level of work that goes on in between meetings in terms of just the amount of information, the amount of preparation that is provided to us so that we are informed and best able to do the work. So thank you, staff. I would like to now, I'm looking for approval for our minutes from our December 11th meeting. And they're on page 1. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, conversations? All those in favor of approval of the minutes indicated by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Then we also have, you'll find on page 11, I'd ask your consideration of the minutes of the January 16th minutes from the Executive Committee, where we met to discuss a 9th Amendment to the lease. And before I ask for a motion, I do just want to provide an amendment, a correction to what is in the minutes. And so if you refer to page 12 in your booklet, it's provision R-15-1.1, and then where it says resolved, and I want to actually give you the amended language for your approval. And that is as follows: that the Commission for Higher Education approves the 9th Amendment in the building lease in accordance with the background information provided in this agenda item. So it's just an error in the information in your book, and so I wanted to provide you the accurate information. So with that amended, is there a motion to approve?
Second.
The motion and a second. All those in favor indicated by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So then it is approved. And now we're ready for our public square. I think the timing is perfect, especially given the great conversation in our working session today regarding all the efforts that are going into creating more students who are prepared for college, more students who are excelling academically in high school so they can go to college and persist and complete. And so with that, Jason Bierce is going to lead us through our public square discussion. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to Jason.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could have our guests please take their seats here on the chairs provided. I think the microphones will pick up when we're seating, but if not, we can move that closer to you. As our chairman indicated, we're getting ready to head into our strategic planning process for the next 3 years, and one of the core elements of that plan is going to be around career readiness and career success. And so we want to take a moment this month and next month to really spotlight some educators and employers, both at the secondary and post-secondary level, that are really taking a leadership position in this and really showing us what's possible in different contexts. And today we're fortunate to have two schools and their employer and student counterparts, a public school, a private school. We have Noblesville High School that has developed an internship program. We have Providence Crystal Ray that's developed a corporate work study program. And I hope I'm not stealing the thunder from the folks from Noblesville, but I thought it was interesting. We were talking. Pause here for a second.
Thank you, Jerry. We can hear you. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, who else is online with you?
One other person. Hello?
Who else has joined us online besides Jerry Bepko?
There's one other person, and
It's a hacker.
she's part of the crowd, but I'm not sure. I know her, but I can't think of the name.
Is it Susanna? Is Susanna on there?
Thank you.
That's all right. We're going to go ahead. We'll be okay, Jerry. As long as you can hear us, we're going to move ahead.
Well, now we got that figured out.
Sorry about the problem.
No problem.
The principal, Jeff Bryant, from Noblesville High School, was telling me that they didn't set out to create an internship program. They set out to think about how the school could sort of reimagine itself for the 21st century and, with greater relevance for students. And that led them to an internship program, which I think speaks to what, we want to discuss here today, which is we want to figure out how we can make sure that students are able to make relevant connections, meaningful connections to what they learn in the classroom, to their interests, to their career aspirations, to a successful career path. And that may result in an internship program, it may result in a corporate work study program, it may result in something entirely different. But what we want to make sure is that we're exploring and shining a light on opportunities that make it possible for more students to, in an intentional way, find their path, stay on their path, and ultimately complete a college credential and move successfully into the workforce. And so with that brief bit of context, I'd like to give each of our panelists an opportunity to sort of introduce themselves, talk briefly about their model, how it came to be. I have some facilitated questions I'd like to share with the group, and certainly members of the commission, if there's questions you'd like to ask or areas you'd like us to probe a little bit more deeply into, please feel free to speak up. Jeff, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, my name is Jeff Bryant. I'm the principal at Noblesville High School. I'm going to go ahead and let these folks introduce themselves, and I'll talk to you for just a minute.
I'm Susan Wursma. I'm the internship coordinator at Noblesville High School.
I'm Sam Sigmund, and I'm a senior at Noblesville High School and currently interning with Elmer Scientific.
Good afternoon. My name is Kenny Wilson, and I'm representing the engineering department at Homer Scientific.
First of all, we appreciate the opportunity to sit here and talk a little bit about our internship program. It's a program that we really are just in the fourth semester of having at Noblesville High School, and I think as we talk today, you'll see how it has grown during that time, and we're pretty proud of it at this point. I did talk a little bit ago about the fact that we didn't really start out to create an internship program. In 2012, we started going through the revisioning what the high school experience needed to look like. So not just the programming, but the curriculum and the instruction and overall the experience for students. And through that discussion, we couldn't get away from the idea of transfer and application and what transfer and application needed to look like at the high school level. We felt at Noblesville High School that we were pretty good at teaching kids a lot of stuff. And we were hoping that when they learned a bunch of stuff, that they would be successful past high school. And as we're reminded once in a while, hope is not a strategy, so we had to do something more than hoping that by teaching them a lot of stuff, they were then going to be successful. So we needed to start creating opportunities for them to take, hopefully, what they're learning and transfer and apply that in different settings. And at its core, that's where the internship program at Noblesville High School started. We wanted to give students the opportunity to transfer and apply what they've learned, and then, as will be shared here in a little bit, of course, it's much more than that. It's the opportunity to practice soft skills, critical thinking skills, and a lot of the skills that may not occur, unfortunately, with the soft skills, especially daily within the building. So one of the things that we did at Noblesville High School is we started to reach out beyond our walls. And I know that probably sounds pretty simple, but it's really not. Traditionally, high schools, I don't think, often reach outside their walls for assistance in helping to prepare our students. And that was the first step, was creating community partnerships. Our mayor of Noblesville, Mayor Ditzler, started hosting CEO summits That was a great resource for us. We made a lot of our original contacts at those CEO summits, where we basically sat in a room. We kind of presented in theory what Noblesville High School wanted to do as far as the idea of transfer and application and preparing students for college and careers. Susie and myself collected business cards, and we really just started that conversation one-on-one with businesses about what we wanted our students to experience. But then probably the most important part of that for us as a high school is that we were listening to these corporations and these businesses, and they were telling us what they needed in employees and what they needed to see out of a workforce. So from then we started fairly small, and I'll let Susie talk about that here in just a little bit, but we started sending students out in a pilot program, about 22 in the first semester, and we had about 10 businesses that we worked with, and in just 2 years now we have 175 of our students and 53 businesses that we're working with. We'll have almost 30% of the graduates at Noblesville High School this year will participate in an internship program, so that occurred really in just 4 semesters. We will have well over 200 kids next year and well over 60 or 70 businesses. It's become to the point now that we have literally owners and CEOs and the HR people of businesses coming to us wanting our students to be placed out in the field. Susie's having meetings all the time with people coming to us. Now that's a change, because 2 years ago we were cold calling and knocking on doors and trying to find people, and worried, quite honestly, if we were going to be able to find the places to place our students. And that has really turned in just 2 years. I'm going to let Susie talk a little bit more about the details, and we may come back to exactly why we set this up.
I'm going to explain just some of the nuts and bolts about the program. It's only for high school seniors. It is a non-paid internship, and we were purposeful in doing that because we did not want to be a traditional co-op program where kids just got a job, made some money, and went home and didn't think about it. So the kids actually have to have a career pathway in mind or have some idea of what they think they want to do. They, in fact, right now are in the process of registering our juniors, and then I sit down in the spring and have at least 2 meetings with each kid, sometimes more, each student. And at that, I'm, kind of trying to find out where their interests are and where they think they would like to spend the next year interning. The students actually intern about 15 hours over a 2-week period. We are on block scheduling, so they go every other day for 3 hours to their internship site. Probably what I've found one of the most important things that is creating success is getting good matches. So that in talking with the kids and looking at their transcripts and seeing how they've done in school, can find a spot for them where they are going to enjoy it and learn. Truthfully, we want this to be a win-win. Obviously, it's a win for our kids, but we also want to set up a situation with the businesses where they are glad to take these kids on, and the kids are, helping them as well. And I think that we've done that so far because we are growing. This year, it's just been a pleasant surprise at the number of businesses that have contacted us and I've met with, and can kind of get a feel for the kind of students that they're looking for. It's not just businesses, we work with nonprofits as well, so we're getting kids involved in that part, and like Jeff said, connecting all the things that their curriculum, what they're learning, and applying them and seeing why it's important. I'm going to let you guys talk a little bit, and we'll go back.
So just the typical day at my internship, it takes up 2 of my classes that I would have taken if I just had classes at school. So I start the morning off at 7:30 and head into my internship, and I have my own cubicle I share with another intern that comes in later in the day. And we have software we work on, and Kenny will give us projects and different stuff like that. And one thing Kenny has taken the liberty to do is he created a spreadsheet, and on the spreadsheet, each day at my internship, I track what I did, 2 to 3 positive thoughts, improvement ideas, a pro and a con about the assignment. And this has really let me reflect over the last semester and this semester about what my work has actually been. I've worked on a couple projects that Helmer is actually going to use for one of their new releases, and it means something to me, which is nice. So Kenny will give us projects, and other employees can now work with us through something Kenny set up, where they have instructions, they help us side by side, and it's kind of like a co-ed as we work through projects, stuff like that.
Yeah, so as Sam mentioned, I mentor 4 of the Noblesville High School co-ops. I have a fantastic time with them. They're highly motivated. You know, they show up to work on time. They check their emails like working adults do, like all of us that get paid, right? They're not getting paid a monetary value. They are getting high school education, high school credit for showing up. They're getting real world experiences, which I think is huge. I'm from Noblesville. I graduated in 2000. I'm also a Purdue University student, so I'm yet to finish school. So this is very motivating for me, and I've got a lot of insight and motivation to give these students. I have a 6-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter that are going to come up through the Noblesville program. So anything that I can do to help out in the community, the better. So.
Well, I have lots of questions I'd like to ask this group, but let's give Joe a chance to talk
Jason,
about. Sorry.
is it okay if they have a question?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
They're the bosses, so yes.
May I? I don't know if this is...
It should be.
Are you with the company? I didn't quite understand that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I work in the engineering department at Helmer Scientific. I've been with
Okay.
the company almost 11 years.
And so then is the young man working in IT, is that it?
Engineering.
Engineering.
Yeah.
And what sort of project?
So Sam has worked on a couple different projects. He does his main project, so I call it the year-end project. All 4 students have one. And what that is on our production floor, Helmer Scientific, we manufacture multiple product lines to serve the life science industry. So blood bank refrigerators, plasma freezers, platelet incubators. These guys have took on these work instructions to which a laborer would basically do their job off of. Mm-hmm. And they're bringing those up to standards. These instructions are outdated, 10 to 12 years old, which costs the company a lot of money and training time. So what they're doing is the 3D world, right? 3D assembly, they're converting pictures and 2D sketches into a live model that can be utilized for new innovative ideas, for marketing presentations, things like that are going to be on the production floor. So some of the work that they've done has been presented to the production floor, and all the guys that work on the floor, they're excited about it. Mm-hmm. So they're excited to see this change actually happening.
The other thing I suppose that happens is that you, as the school, sort of forces the students to think about a career.
They do.
Maybe they haven't been thinking about.
And we can speak to that now. So Sam Sigmund he's not going to school for engineering. He works for me. He's going to work for me from August until May. He's doing engineering work, but he's going to be an IU student. So Sam can maybe speak to that a little bit. But yeah, so I mean that's what's great. We're teaching them life skills. We're preparing them for whether or not. So Sam's going to college. We're prepping him for college. He's learning how to write test reports, lab reports. We're going to help him out in his classes. So.
Thank you.
Joe?
Wonderful. Joe Height, president of Providence Christo Rey High School. I have with me one of our students, Byron Cook Jr., and I'll allow him to share a little bit about his history as well. But essentially, Providence Christo Rey High School is part of the Christo Rey Network. The Christo Rey Network commenced approximately 20 years ago in Chicago. We are one of soon to be 30 schools across the country. So we're located in 28 different cities, and the design of the Corporate Work Study program, which is a integral linchpin to the curriculum experience that students engage in, is the professional internship experience. And so our students begin that experience at the freshman level. So each year they're going to earn approximately 250 hours of professional internship experience. The way we structure our day is a little bit different. They're in class 4 days a week, and then they're at their corporate work study location 1 day of the week. The design is simply that we're wanting to ensure that the students have an opportunity to make connections between that of what they're learning in the classroom to that of what they're experiencing on a weekly basis in the corporate work study locations. We currently have 78 corporate work study partners across the city. Fortunately, we are a private school, so fortunately those corporate work study partners do invest directly in the cost of education for the students. Essentially, as students get involved in the corporate work study program, they're also at the same time, all of our students on, as you referred to, the Core 40, all of our students are on the Core 40 academic honors track or technical honors track. Our school's a little bit different in that for all of our graduates, and we're fortunate going back to 2010, our school has been in existence for 8 years, that 100% of our students have been accepted to college since the first graduating class. If you look at college access, we're at about 93%, and if you look at persistence to degree, we're sitting at about 75% based upon the spring conclusion of the spring semester of 2014. The Christopher Ray Network design is unique in that it's designed to serve an underserved population at times. It's basically, we're one of the few schools that I know that has a ceiling in terms of what the income level of a family can be. And so for the students, they have an opportunity that sometimes they might not have had available to them if they so desire to pursue a private education because of the financial limitations that might have been presented. And so through the efforts of the corporate work study partners, foundations, as well as individual sponsors, we are able to provide the education where families are providing contribution towards tuition of that of 1 to 3% of the total tuition. Most importantly, I think what we're here to talk about today is about the impact of the corporate work study professional internship program. And so I'll let Byron jump in a little bit to share about what he does, where he works, the experience that he has, and then I'll step in to share a little bit how that's integrated into our curriculum design.
Good afternoon. My name is Byron Cook Jr. I'm a junior at Providence Cristo Rey. I work at Vertellus Specialties, which is sort of a chemical engineering plant. I do a variety of things there. My typical day at Vertellus Specialties, I work every Monday. All juniors work every Monday in my junior class. I start and I clock in around 8:15 that morning. I clock in around 8:15 that morning, and I begin my daily worksheet, which I write down the time I came in and then my objectives for the day. I work in a variety of different positions around the clock, such as I'm in the chemical laboratory, I'm in IT, I'm in engineering, and also I do administrative work. More specifically, in the chemical lab, I work alongside the chemists, do chemist tests such as basic Carl Fisher test, TSS tests, anything with catalyst reactions. It's also a learning experience for me too. In IT, I work hands-on with computers, the software, the actual ins and out of how the computer runs and the networking for the company. In engineering, I scan drawings from other plants for Vertellus and put them in the file system. I also work with the engineers, learn the ins and outs of engineering. And in administrative work, I learn basics such as filing, phone etiquette, and the basics of administrative work. What I can say about this program is I transferred to Providence Cristo Rey. Just a little background information about myself. I transferred, I went to North Central High School for 2 years, and I transferred to this private school looking for an opportunity. And I would say this has been the biggest opportunity that I've been able to have. What other way to experience a career and a working ability than to work hands-on and physically in person? And I would say that every day I do a different thing. So I'm not limited to one item or one specific objective a day. There's a variety, as I mentioned before, of things that I can accomplish. And at the end of the day, as the worksheet that I mentioned before, I write down my breaks, my time schedule when I clock in. I also write down my objectives and I check them off if I completed them, which that teaches me time management, how to manage my schedule, because it teaches me self-discipline to tell myself how much time to do this, when to get this done, manage my breaks. I'm on my own, but also under the supervision of my supervisor, of course, but it teaches me self-discipline and self-direction. But as I was saying, I do a variety of these things. I write down the objectives, and then I write down certain skills that I've had during the day, such as persistence, if I had persistence during the day, if I did teamwork, such as if I was shadowing with the chemist, or things alongside that. So overall, I would say that working at Virtellus has definitely opened my eyes to exactly what engineering is, exactly what chemistry is. And I have professional skills such as communication through administrative work, such as self-discipline, self-direction, time management, a lot of lifelong goals that you can use inside of school, college, and your career in the workplace. And I would say that it also establishes networking. And networking is important because you establish relationships with people who play a part in your future. And if you have those people that play a part in your future, then you're able to make a greater thing with your life and play a bigger part in the society and accomplish things in the world that really changes the world, you know. So overall, I would say at Virtellus, it's a great opportunity. And I look forward to coming there every single day. It's absolutely amazing. And I love the people I work with. I have great relationships with everyone I work with. They teach me, they guide me, they do everything to help raise me up in the way that I should go.
Byron, you've gotten to try so many different things as part of this experience. How has that helped you decide what you want to do after high school?
Well, it gave me looking for a career, what I actually want to become. I wanted to become a mechanical engineer or civil engineer. And this is a chemical engineering plant. I was actually interested in chemistry. And I'm learning what actually is involved in chemical engineering, such as it's enhanced my mathematical skills in school. It's enhanced my chemistry skills in school. And these are things I could take away from the job and use in my academics and in everyday life. But this helped me find my path as if this is really what I want to do, or find other opportunities that are out there for me to work in. And so I was looking into chemical engineering and I actually enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. So I would say this has opened my eyes to a new field, and I've taken advantage of that, and I'm starting to look into chemical engineering more.
That's great. Joe?
Give you an idea of the design of the program. The reason why we run it 4 years is it provides you that we'll share with students, and I want to bring Byron because Byron gives you an example of what that experience is just in one semester. Now take that experience over 8 semesters, over 1,000 hours, and then you have a true picture of the variety of educational experiences that then integrate with your academics, let it be math, sciences, English, and so forth. What we set up is we share with students it's just as important for you to learn about what you're interested in as it is to learn what you may not be interested in, where you may have had a particular perception of what a career would be like. And so for our students, we always share, as long as the company's sad that you might not be returning, that you have the opportunity to choose a different path each year. And we're fortunate that approximately last year, 75% of our students asked to return to the companies that they worked at. We obviously have the same question for that of the employers. Would you like the students to return? But we have a job fair every single summer. And in that job fair, all of our employers come, similar as you would see in a college job fair, and share what the job responsibilities are, what the students will be exposed to, and what skills they hope to be able to walk away with from this experience over about approximately 250 hours. And students get the chance to choose. I can share with you numerous stories over the years where students anticipated when they came to school that they knew, oh, I want to be an attorney or something of that nature. After spending a couple years in a couple different law firms, they realized, oh wow, you're not in the courtroom that often, you're actually doing a great deal of research, and maybe that isn't exactly what I want to do in my career. And so by learning about these different career options, and as we share, we have breadth of career industries that they can explore into, and as they return to the companies, the great thing about the companies is they've allowed the students to explore industries within their own company. For an example, you have an accounting department, you might have a law department, you might also have a marketing department, human resources department, and then obviously what your expertise is, in this example, engineering. So students will often return to the company, but return in a different capacity of what their work responsibilities are, based upon the feedback that they're receiving from the supervisors on a weekly basis, as well as we also do semester evaluations. And then when the students are back in school, not only are they taking their academics, but every week they're involved in corporate work study training. And in those training programs, they're involved in creating, first and foremost, a career plan, then a college plan, then a resume that they're creating. From there, they're creating their cover letters, they're engaged in interview skill set training, and finally, after that, they're doing a reflection piece as it relates to the experience. So for an example, for our seniors are earning dual credit through the business school at Marian University, Business 260, as it relates to their experience and how it coincides with their internship program at Marian University. So it's a unique design that, yes, we do begin, and a lot of folks will ask, how do you begin this at age 14? There is a great deal amount of training that begins at the beginning of the school year or in the summer before the school year commences for new students coming in. And as I shared, we have ongoing training on a weekly basis. And then there's also the integration of their experiences in all of the disciplines within the actual curriculum design that they have.
Joe, you said multiple things that sparked several questions, but I kind of want to ask a question on where you ended. When we have these conversations about integrating career experiences into the high school curricula, I think there's a fair amount of skepticism as to what can you really expect a student of 14 or 15 years of age? Is that too soon to ask them to start thinking about these things, or are they really equipped at that age to be making those kinds of decisions? Would you like to respond to that in any way?
It's a great question. What we've learned, because we do accept freshmen, obviously. A majority of our starting students begin at their freshman year, but we always reserve about 15% of our seats for incoming students for that of transfer students, because many of the students may have realized in their freshman, sophomore year that there's opportunities that they're interested in exploring that maybe they just had not considered at the 8th grade level. To point to your question is, we've recognized that if it's a freshman going in, no question, I'll share with you, there's a little bit of a deer in headlights effect, where they're now walking into a company, they're 14 years old, and they're with peers that are now 3 times the age that they are. Often they've never been acclimated to this type of program. But what we've also noticed is the sophomores have the same experience. And so it depends upon when you want them to overcome that initial reaction or experience of what is corporate America really like. From our vantage point, we prefer to begin that where we know, as we share with employers, it's a little bit of the bow and arrow theory. The first few days that you're working there, please invest as much time as you can in with the students to help them successfully understand the mission of your company, to understand how your company operates and the employers and so forth. I'm sure you do the same. And then once the students understand that program of what you're doing and what their responsibilities are, then regardless of the age, we've noticed students can jump in, and we expect the employers to really see an ROI, lack of a better term, probably in October. But when you're only there 1 day a week and you arrive mid-August, you're talking the first 6 days or so, is it fair to say, Ryan, that you're really just learning about the company and what your role will be in the company before you're actually fully engaged. And I compare it to, if any of us take a job, how solidified into that position are you on Monday after your first week of the job? You really begin to understand where you're going to play a role after a full week of that experience. And so I would share, without question, maturity plays a role. That's why we don't start it at the junior high level. But we believe that freshmen have the capacity, if prepared correctly and provided ongoing training throughout the year, to engage in these experiences.
Thank you very much. Similar question. At the Noblesville program, your students are seniors, so they're a bit older than the students at Providence. But from your experience, and I asked this either the school or the employer, what are the unique challenges or opportunities with having high school age students in the workplace? Do you want to start, Kenny?
Yeah, so one of the unique challenges, so Sam and Brandon, anybody who starts a new job, you're gonna have to build that confidence up, right? You're gonna have to get to know people. You're gonna have to hold meetings. You're gonna have to communicate with people of higher levels than you. So some of the things that we do with our co-ops is we assign them risk analysis. So we have a system in place that empowers all of our employees to do things, to submit forms for ideas that they want to get done, and so that forces all of our co-ops to go speak to director of engineering to go speak to an HR representative, to go to our technical service department and question, why do you need this done, and is it really important? So it makes them, so I guess the biggest challenge for me is to get them out of their comfort zone. So for me personally, I was thoroughly impressed with the amount of CAD background that the Noblesville High School students had when they came in. So they hit the ground running on that, right? That was the one thing that motivated them. They were really good at it. That's what they wanted to do. Sam actually would volunteer to come in after hours. I don't know if that was legal or not, but he wanted to come in and work, right? So he's not getting paid. He's
Under 16.
getting an education for it.
It's a great business model.
Highly motivated. So getting them out of their comfort zone to go experience other things. So they grasp onto that. And for me to see, their confidence level from day one to now is very impressive.
Schools, would you like to
I think
respond?
I would add to that. I think the students are somewhat surprised at the beginning how independent and how much responsibility they are given. I don't know that our students know the type of impact that they're going to be have the opportunity to have in certain businesses. We've had interns with the city, and they've been given pretty large tasks of, in some cases, running a social media account that's in the city's name, and this is a 17 or 18-year-old student who's behind that account. I don't think that those are things that our students necessarily thought they were going to be given the opportunity to do. And I know that in the reflective journaling that you mentioned, the reflection that your students also do, we get to hear some of that, and Susie shares those with me. And quite honestly, those are the part that as the principal of the building I want to hear. Those are the times where you're sitting at your desk and you're reading these journals and you get a smile on your face, because our students are being able to see and have opportunities that, quite frankly, we can't provide within our walls. Okay, we're kind of an island unto ourselves. So when our students go out outside of that island, they get experiences that I know they did not think they were going to have when that internship started.
Question for the students, maybe start with you, Sam. So from this experience, what have you learned about the work environment that you didn't know going into the experience?
Well, one of the biggest things, and it may sound odd, but I learned what an actual job is. You hear Kenny's an engineer, but what does that mean? What does he do? And it's a lot more than just designing or developing a thing. There are reports you have to do, lots of paperwork and logistics, and lots of data you have to analyze. And what I've learned is I have to communicate a lot with the people, and that can be intimidating. Helmer only has 200 employees? 200, roughly. Yeah, roughly 200 employees. So they're a very close-knit group, and then just to get thrown into that, I learned a lot about communication, and like Kenny also said, I came in after hours. I had timelines, I had deadlines I had to get done. So I enjoy it, and I learned that there are responsibilities that you may not know of when you sign up for a job, but they're there, that you have to abide by.
Sounds like you got a leg up on your peers. Maybe some of us in the workforce already. Byron, what about you? What have you learned in the work environment that surprised you or that you didn't know going in?
I would say the thing that I learned was actually kind of bouncing off what he mentioned, but actually how a job functions, or more specifically to where I am, how a plant functions. What exactly goes into, how does administration combine with a plant? And I've learned that I've learned organization such as who plays a part in who's the boss here, who's underneath the boss, and I've learned such as the totem pole of people in the work area, and I've learned exactly where I fit in too on that totem pole. I would say more specifically, the thing that I learned in a general picture is organization and communication, because in a plant, communication is key. If there's no communication to where a problem is occurring inside the plant, that could be a major problem for not only the workers and the employees in the plant, but the people surrounding the plant, the inhabitants of the area. So I would say that the communication and the way that a plant or a job overall runs is what I learned, and the biggest thing I noticed.
That's great. Susan, your program has grown exponentially in a really short time. Can you talk a little bit about your employer engagement recruitment strategy? Is it driven primarily based upon the employers who are interested? Is it based primarily on what students express interest in? Is it the regional workforce need? Is it all of the above?
It's actually all of the above. I, spend part of my time calling on businesses and employees and finding out what their needs are, what they're looking for, what kind of students they want. And then the rest of my time, I'm talking to students, listening to where their interests are or where their strengths are and what they'd like to see. And it's ongoing. I am involved in the Chamber of Commerce. I go on chamber meetings, and they do monthly meetings where they visit a business. And I can say that every single business that I visited ends up in an internship for somebody. Anytime that it's the CEO summits that Jeff talked about, where people came, they kind of started it, but then they talk to each other. I think we're lucky we live in a town like Noblesville, and there's a lot of communication. I've been involved with the hospitals. We have Riverview as our local hospital, but we have kids there and at St. Vincent's, now at Community Hospital. So I think as we grow and learn and I get to know more people, then I can kind of take my story to somebody else and have the success to tell about. So it just, kind of just keeps growing.
Joe indicated that about 3/4 of his students want to go back to the same employer that the first time. I know your model's a little bit different, but have you been able to determine any trends in terms of if a student has an experience with one employer in a particular industry, does that help validate their interests, or does it often help them sort of cross something off the list, or is it hard to pull out?
No, the students actually do an online class with me through our learning system, and part of that is where they read articles, they do reflections, and that's honestly where I get most of my information, and because it's very telling. They're very honest in those. I think it's because they're writing, they're not having to speak to somebody. And I would say the majority of students probably are validated in that is what they want to do. Although, for example, the kids that have been in the medical field, lots of them have thought, well, I'm set on being a nurse, let's say, and they decide that isn't what they want to do, but instead it's something else within that field.
Okay.
I want to add to that. Our first interns of our pilot program are just now sophomores in college, and we've talked about, I think you called it persistence data earlier, is after those students have been in college for 4 or 5 years, are they in a field or did they continue a pathway that they started in an internship program? We're very interested to see what that data looks like. Because we have had examples where students thought they were going in a certain field. Counseling is the one that we had a student at Prevail, and she knew by the end of that that's not what she was going to go to college for, and that is what she was going to go to college for before she started the internship program, and that's important to us, obviously. But to see if they're, if the interest in engineering or technology or business or whatever that may be after they finish the internship program, if that coincides and is still the same 4 years later. So that is definitely data that as this program continues, I think we're going to be able to take something from that, but we're new enough, we just don't have it yet.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, I'm curious, what percent of your kids don't go to college? High school graduate?
About 82% of our students go to some sort of secondary education.
Right. Yeah. So the 18% who don't, I would think this internship program would be especially beneficial.
Yes, but I want to be cautious there. I think you're right, and we will take anyone in the internship program, but we certainly don't want to necessarily track in any certain group in the internship program. We have a great example is Gaylor Electric. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them or not, but they're located in Noblesville, and they have interns that have gone directly to work after they finish the internship program, so more of that career piece.
Right.
And then we also have, and I know this is not the conversation we're having today, but we have an apprenticeship program through the Associated Builders and Contractors that we now have going on. So we will have students that start in the apprenticeship program as a junior. It's kind of more of a survey course. As a senior, they start year 1 of that apprenticeship program, and they're also an intern, in this case at Gaylor. And then by the time that they are 19 years old and going into the workforce, they are in year 2 of the apprenticeship program. So you are correct, it is a bit valuable for that student, but it is certainly valuable for the student who knew all along he was going to go to Purdue. But maybe this either solidified why he was going or what he was going to go for.
Looks like we got lots of questions here.
Yeah, I have a quick question, and it's kind of a logistics question, really, for both sides, but how do students get to and from their internship? In your case, possibly they drive, but not everyone has access to a car or has a car of their own. And to your point, if you have a freshman or sophomore and some juniors, they're not able to drive yet. So how in the world do you get them to and from their internships?
Go ahead. For us, our students come from throughout Marion County. We have a unique program with the corporate work study design that I'll be the first to share that it's, I imagine Byron would agree that maybe it's not perfect for every single student. It's for students that are looking for a particular experience that exposes them to these career opportunities. And so our school by design is probably never going to be over never over 400, but somewhere in that 300, 350 size range. With that, we have partners that are throughout downtown Indianapolis. I would say approximately 50%. And our school is located a little bit to the west of the zoo. But then the other 50% of our partners are located in areas near Keystone at the Crossing, even up into Carmel and Shadeland and throughout the city. So we do have a pretty robust transportation program. We have 5 buses. We have 36 pickup points in the morning to bring students to school. Because when I met with parents years ago, I said, why would you not send your child to Providence Christi Rey? What would be the limiting factor? And they said, I can't get them there. And so that was a charge to me to go out and find generous individuals to help support a transportation design. So we have 36 pickup points throughout the city, bring them to school, and then 20-25% of the students are back on those buses right after breakfast, and they head off to the corporate work study sites. So, depending upon the location, some of them there are there in a matter of 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and some are there, it takes about 40 minutes if you're up on the north side of town. And then obviously we do it again in the afternoon, bring them back to school, and then all the students get a chance to go home. And about 95% of our student population takes advantage of the transportation available to and from home. And then all of them take advantage for the corporate work study.
You said there's a cap on those that can go, the families at a certain income level.
Yes.
In other words, if your income is above 40,000 or something like that.
That's a good example, yes.
They're not eligible to go to your school?
That is correct.
And 100% go to college?
100% are accepted to college. Yeah. College access, meaning you went to college shortly thereafter, after spring. We're sitting over there since 2010 at about 93%.
What's your ceiling? Is it 40,000?
It depends upon dependents as well. So it's as you take a look at free and reduced lunch data and how they make those determinations, it's very similar to that.
Sarah, I think you had a question?
I had the same logistical question. So if we could hear from you guys kind of how you do it from a public school standpoint. And then I also have another question. You're both from urban, suburban areas. Do you think this is scalable to a rural area or an area that maybe doesn't have quite as much industry going on? Do you guys have any thoughts on whether that's possible or how that might be possible?
I'm going to let Susie answer the transportation question first, and we'll answer the rural area question.
Thank you.
The kids do drive themselves to their internship. We don't want that to be the factor that that keeps them from interning those, so we get creative and we've organized carpools at times, and then also have done some work in transporting kids to their internship.
Do I think it can happen in a rural school? Absolutely. In fact, one of our great examples is we had a student who, and this happens from time to time, we have students that come to us and tell us, this is what I want to do and this is where I want to go. All right, well, have you contacted that place? And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, so we make the contact. And we have Beck's Hybrids, which is in Atlanta, Indiana, has one of our students from Noblesville. So we're actually sending our student into a rural area. So we've had schools, over the last year, we've probably had, I don't want to exaggerate, but 15 to 20 schools probably at some point have contacted us about our internship program. And they've been schools from all over. Is the transportation issue more of an issue for a rural school? I think absolutely, just because the opportunities that are there. But I will also say this is kind of silly in a way, but we have companies in Noblesville that I never knew about. I've lived in Noblesville for 15 years, and we've got companies that are coming to us, and some of them might be 15 employees, and some of them might be 200 employees or 500 employees, and I never even knew they existed, but they're coming to us and they're hosting interns. So I think a lot of it is that I think schools in general are, again, I said this earlier, they stay within their walls, and that's kind of a shame. And I think that we were brave enough, and Susie is good enough in doing this, that we opened our doors up and we went out there, and what we're really surprised about sometimes is the number of people that want to be a part of this. And again, businesses and companies and nonprofits, and our city council, our mayor's office has interns, people that we didn't know was going to be interested in this. But yes, transportation obviously I would think is more of a challenge for us.
Jeff, you said at the beginning you didn't set out to create an internship. You said it, wait one second, that you set out to sort of reimagine or change what your high school looked like. Have you observed a change in the culture at your high school since this rolled out?
Yeah, I think so. See, this is one small brick in the changes at Noblesville High School. I mean, we're talking about the internship program today, but it's a small change in what we've done over the last 2 or 3 years. There's a great quote by Tony Wagner, and I'm going to butcher it here, but he talks about it's not about what you know, it's about what you can do with what you know. And in its simplest terms, that's the change that Noblesville High School has made. So we have changed, we've gone through a revision of our curriculum, a revision of our instruction, a revision of our assessments. Our assessments no longer necessarily take place with sitting at a desk and taking a bunch of multiple choice of questions. We have performance tasks now that allow our students to transfer and apply what they know. And then ultimately the experience changes. The internship is one of those experiences that has changed at Noblesville High School, but it's just a piece. And that's what I said earlier when we were talking before. You know, we didn't go about this by starting an internship program. Now, there are some benefits in the internship program that, and quite honestly, we didn't know was going to come, and you would probably say the same things. There's some things that our students are learning that we didn't necessarily even predict that they would learn. You know, when we listen to some of our students talk and some of the experiences they have, they're results of this idea of reimagining what we believe the experience of the high school student needed to be like.
Kenny, as the sole representative of all employers in the state of Indiana.
No pressure.
No pressure. Similar question. Have you noticed a change or what the effect has been on having these students at your place of business on a regular basis?
Yeah, so I'd say Helmer's relatively new to the internship program also. So for the past 4 or 5 years or so, we, sorry, yes?
No, you finish your thought.
Make sure that she had a chance to answer the
Sorry.
question.
So Helmer, we employ roughly 15 to 20 interns per year. This is the first semester, the first year technically that we've had high school co-ops for interns. So what it does for me personally, when I see the youth come in, so I'm 32 years old, I see these kids come in, it motivates me, right? I think it motivates everybody throughout the company. It encourages them to consider, do I go back to school? See how smart these individuals are coming into the building. I mean,
You better go back.
exactly. So it's realistic to think that companies in the future now are looking for higher education. These kids are getting education in high school. You know, they're graduating with associate's degrees. Realistically, they could have their master's by 24 years old. You know, that did not exist 10 years ago. So that's very motivating for myself.
It's great.
Yeah, first of all, I'm thrilled with this presentation. It's been great. And Sam and Byron, you guys did a tremendous job. I wish I had the opportunity to ask your parents what they've noticed a difference in the two of you since this has started. And I think actually my question was surrounding, Jeff, what you had just answered. And so I'll ask Joe the same thing. Coming full circle, how has this had an impact in the way that you administer your faculty? You mentioned your curriculum changes, and I know, Jeff, you mentioned multiple changes, but specific, and I don't know, Jeff, if you can point to this, specific to these programs, how has it had an impact on your school and your approach and your strategy, et cetera?
Absolutely. One thing that we benefit from is being part of the Crystal Ray Network. The curriculum design is created by all the administrators and teachers across the country. And so it's a common curriculum that's implemented. Obviously, there's uniquenesses to each state as it relates to the Let It Be Common Core, whatever state standards are requesting for schools to adhere to. But with that information, we've adjusted in terms of the support roles for students. The design of the Crystal Ray Network was originally 2 weeks of training when you first arrived in the summertime. And after a period of time, I looked at it and I said, you know, they're still having, as I use that term, deer in the headlights. No matter how much you tell them before they get in there, you need to have continuous training throughout the year. So we essentially cut the amount of training leading up to it by about 50% and then embedded that into our school day throughout every single day. Give you an idea, we run a little bit longer. Our students arrive to school at about 7:30 and they leave at 4:35. And so we add an additional hour where when half the student body's at lunch, the other half of the student body's involved in corporate work study training. Another thing we've implemented is many of our students never had access to test prep for things such as AccuPlacer as it relates to being able to receive dual credit from Ivy Tech. They didn't have an opportunity to go to the Kaplan Center and be prepared for the PSAT or the ACT. So we've embedded that into that period of time when they're not at lunch to be able to receive that training. Beyond that, at the end of the school day, what we've realized is for our students, I was at a presentation by the United Negro College Fund as well as Mind Trust, and they had a presenter from that of Harvard that shared there are some basic things that you're obviously doing as well at your school that we all know that schools need. They need more time with the students. They need more one-on-one time with the students. And so what we've implemented in there at the end of the day, where we're funding our teachers to serve as tutors at the end of the day. So every day for 40 minutes at the end of the school day, depending upon where you need assistance, you have teachers that are in disciplines. So I know your school is larger, but you might have, for an example, 8 teachers that are in English. Well, for us, we have half of our teachers working with the students in an area where many students are studying together, for an example, the cafeteria. The other half of the teachers are working with students of only 5 at a time, where they're providing tutoring for the students specifically based upon their needs. That's reflected by assessments that give us an indication of what kind of support they require. So they're with those tutors for 30-day periods. And so if you were weak in science, for an example, you're now in getting 30 days, 4 days a week of science tutoring over a period of a month, and hopefully that helps address it. But if it's necessary to continue, then we continue on. So we've addressed, similar as you, same reflection in terms of assessments. The days of Scantrons and filling in the blanks, you need to have an array of assessments. And fortunately, the corporate work study is one design of assessment used in terms of the effectiveness of the education we're providing, but in your classes as well, being able to take the experiences that they have in corporate work study as well as class and allow them to be involved in presentations and group projects and those types of things. So our assessments have changed over the last 4 years rather significantly. Sounds like you've adopted a similar policy.
Thank you.
Yes.
A quick question.
Please.
You know we know each other.
Yes.
Chris and I know your parents very well.
I know you do. I know you do.
That was the question.
Whatever I say, they'll hear about it.
93% of your graduates go to college.
That is correct.
What percent graduate from college?
And so that's what I'm referring to, persistence to degree. For us, again, we've only been in business, this is our 8th year. So I don't have the exact data, but I'd love to be able to share that with you in June when I'll have more information. But right now, as we look at persistence to degree, meaning we're checking your National Clearinghouse data, as well as if the students didn't fill out the ability to be tracked, we're engaged. We have a team that also is keeping in touch with them to see how they're performing. Right now, 75% of all students are still in college, let it be freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other commission members have a question? Let me ask them perhaps a closing question. I'll ask first the students and then I'll ask the administrators. Students, has this internship had an impact on your academic success and progress?
Yes. This internship or this corporate work study program has had a huge impact on my academics. As I mentioned before, since I'm working with as I'm working with the chemists, that improves my mathematical skills. And since I am in chemistry, that improves my chemistry skills, and I am able to understand the lessons taught in class much, much more. And I'm able to help other students in the classroom community who may need help in the classroom. So I would say that this has definitely impacted my academical life at school.
All right. Thank you. And Sam?
I would also agree. It has a great impact on my academics. From the internship, I've learned to communicate better with my peers, in group environments and helping them in class. Lots of the risk analysis that we have to do involves critical thinking, and that takes time and it's not easily learned, and that has helped me throughout my internship and in my school, just by different ways of thinking about solutions and problems from a different perspective.
Thank you. And then administrators, is there any data showing correlation between internships and academic performance?
We have, with our internship program, there's a daily list that students fill out that Byron was referring to, that they talk about their objectives, then how did it relate to what we call career-ready and college-ready thinking skills and strategies. So they identified what did they focus on in those arenas, and they talk about how they could improve. From that, we then have a score that the supervisor is providing. So for an example, right in the middle is meeting expectations, or occasionally exceeding expectations, to consistently exceeding expectations. And I'm pleased to say that a strong majority of our students are all of those categories. But obviously we have a team to work with the student if they happen to get a 2. But with that information, we will watch their scores and improvements and comments from the supervisors improve, and you can track their grades improving. Now, it's not always exactly at the same pace and so forth. Often is the case, you'll see students get more involved in what their career interests may be, and they recognize then, oh my goodness, there is that connection, that bridge to education, and so then their grades follow their success in that of a corporate work study program.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would add that I'm certainly interested in that data at the end of 4 years or 5 years after these students graduate high school, to see what their success rate is in college and careers, because ultimately that's what it's about, right? We're not just graduating 18-year-olds, we're graduating students who hopefully can succeed beyond. But I want to add with what Sam said. I think you look at critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity, and then the other C would be confidence. And I think that our students definitely gain in all 5 of those areas. I think that it's a little bit harder sometimes to measure academically those skills, but I think our students definitely benefit in those areas. I also want to add that Sam is, his family is he's one of 3 that has gone through our internship program at Noblesville High School. He has a sister who's currently at a community hospital, or St. Vincent?
St. Vincent.
St. Vincent Hospital, and then he had a sister who went to our mayor's office. So you said something about asking his parents earlier. What it was you? Was it asking the parents? I think that your parents would speak very highly of our internship program and the experiences you guys have had as part of the program.
I do want to add to that, the confidence is huge. That I can see when I read their reflections in their journals, or how they compare to who they were at the beginning of school and the end of school. And the other thing that often comes up in journals is the idea of teamwork. And I know, Sam, you talked about that as well, that most of the kids, where they go, they're placed in some kind of team, and together they problem solve and find a solution to something. And so I think it's like this aha moment. Wow, people work together when they get into the job force.
This is wonderful. We thank you all very much. I do want to say before you leave, though, Sam and Byron, I know that you all should still be in school. So I'm going to talk to your principal and the president about you all cutting class.
Excuse today.
Field trip.
Thank you all very much for joining us. Appreciate it. Yes, Joe.
I know that normally folks remember about 10 to 15% of what they hear, so I brought with us a piece that kind of captures everything that we discussed a little bit as it relates to our program, and I'm sure they might have something similar that they can forward to you in the near future. So thank you very much, and if you have
We'll
questions,
pass that
don't
around.
hesitate to ask.
Thank you, sir. Nice job, Byron and Sam.
Oh, yeah, he did, yeah, that would be a good question.
And you all now, as a part of, we'll go right into our business item. As you all know, we've had a reform of financial aid.
Very good. I'm proud of Golly.
We've had a reform on financial aid.
You're out of order. Yeah, congrats. Huh?
Excuse me, Commissioner Hubbard.
Hey, yeah, hey, very good. No, I'll do it.
Hey, Al.
Al,
We're in
waiting
session.
for you.
Oh, sure.
Thank you for your time.
Not the problem.
He said he wasn't the problem.
So we have an opportunity to hear end results about the end results coming from our financial aid reform, and so Sarah Ansel is going to share that information with us. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've got a presentation that'll be coming up in a minute, but just to sort of set the stage for that, you know, any good policy work is going to spend as much effort sort of after something changes, evaluating how it went, if it's achieving the intended results, if any you know, tweaks need to be made in implementation to make sure that you know, we're not just sort of passing a law and then hoping it does what we wanted it to do. So this report represents just the first look at this, again, with just one cohort of students that are subject to the new financial aid reforms, looking at what the results were in terms of student behavior. So just to you know, refresh your memory and set the stage for this a bit, it's no surprise to any of you that we're a very generous state when it comes to financial aid, more than $300 million per year toward our state programs, ranking us 7th in the nation and 1st in the Midwest, and providing money for college access for more than 85,000 students each year. Also not a surprise to you that our completion rates, particularly in these programs, are not what we would hope for them to be. And that also, you know, we've done some analyses that we've presented to you over the past year or two that show that, you know, despite receiving aid that they don't have to pay back, students that are participating in these grant programs are averaging more than $20,000 in debt over 4 years. And those that leave college with debt and no degree have to pay that back without the workforce benefits that a college degree provides. Addressing those challenges, in 2013, the General Assembly passed with strong commission support House Enrolled Act 1348, which established, among other provisions, there was a lot in that bill, but really the crux of it for student success was to establish short-term, you know, annual benchmarks for credit completion to keep students on track to graduate on time. This is really critical because, you know, as you know, the state aid programs are limited to 4 years already. Many students were facing a disconnect in education about what it was going to take to graduate on time in terms of how many credits they need to take and complete each year. So sending clear signals instead of just saying, get done in 4 years, but rather saying, enroll in and complete 30 credits over the 12-month period was really aimed at making sure students knew exactly what they needed to do. If you'll recall, we surveyed our financial aid recipients, and 3/4 of them said they expected to graduate on time. About half were taking the necessary credits that semester to do so. And that assumes that they did that, you know, every semester and didn't fail or drop any courses along the way. So we had a big challenge. So the law also provided some mechanisms and some flexibilities to help students meet these benchmarks, including, you know, degree maps, which took effect for this cohort, the second cohort under the reforms, got degree maps at public institutions, the ability to spread aid over 12 months instead of just doing the fall and spring semester, and then additional incentives for GPA and acceleration. So the first year impact, and again, to keep the key provision is, I probably glossed over this more than I should, but the key provision is that a student needs to complete, you know, a 30, 60, 90, 30 credits by the end of the first year, 60 by the end of the second, 90 by the end of the third year to maintain the top level of aid eligibility. There is a safety net for students that are on a 24 credit per year, between 24 and 29 per year path. For 21st Century Scholars, that means they're falling into the Frank-O'Bannon pool, which means their aid could be cut by 2/3 or more. For Frank O'Bannon, the cut is less severe. It's about a 9% difference. So the first year impact, conclusion 1, more students are enrolling in 30 or more credits each academic year. If you look at 21st Century Scholars, that's a 21.6 percentage point jump in the percentage of 21st Century Scholars enrolling in 30 credits. That represents about a 55% improvement. And then the same pattern holds for Frank O'Bannon recipients, but to a lesser degree. So it's a 6 percentage point jump that represents approximately 20% improvement. As you would expect, if more students are taking 30 credits, more students would be completing 30 credits. But I will say the improvement we saw here was muted relative to those who took the 30 credits. We can think of enrolling in 30 credits as everyone's best intentions. Completing the 30 credits is, what, given all the circumstances and challenges, what a student was really able to do. So we can sort of understand that there would be some difference between those two. But again, 21st Century Scholars, a 12.5 percentage point increase. And like the enrollment, that actually represents, if you look at the differential between the two, it's about a 55% improvement there. And then same for Frank O'Bannon, the 4.2 percentage point jump represents about a 20% improvement. So good news all around. I will say that part of the report that we've released talks about some of the challenges that we faced in making sure that students were aware of the requirements that they faced as the law was passing and the governor signing it into law. It was just a short time span between when that first cohort was in freshman orientation over the summer registering for their first semester classes. And so distilling all of those requirements to everybody on the campus, from the financial aid office to the academic advisors to the freshman orientation directors, that posed some challenges for us in that first cohort in particular. It was a bit easier with 21st Century Scholars because we knew who they were before they got to campus. So, we had a clear avenue to get some information to them, and we did send something directly to their home. But the fact that these numbers in terms of taking and completing 30 credits have jumped this much, despite the fact that at the end of first semester only 42% of students knew they were subject to it, leads to really an encouraging picture for the future, that as our awareness efforts really ramp up and the awareness, not only our efforts, but the actual impact of those efforts ramps up, that we're going to see some really significant shifts in this, and hopefully ultimately in our on-time graduation rate as well. Moving into conclusion 3, we found that students, a particular group of students, are using summer classes, or in the first cohort used summer classes to preserve their eligibility. So if we looked at the summer numbers overall, for all students, we're not showing a statewide trend toward more reliance on summer necessarily, but for 21st Century Scholars who were between 24 and 29 credits going into the summer, we saw a 9.7 percentage point jump in those students enrolling in summer classes. And I will provide a disclaimer that the summer numbers we have only look at summer first term and only look at if they went to summer classes at the same institution. So that's not counting, going home for the summer and taking a class at a regional campus or Ivy Tech. So certainly these numbers probably understate the true reliance on summer that we saw in this first cohort. Now it'll be interesting to see going into sort of long-term trends, what happens with summer in future cohorts. So, you might conclude that the reliance on summer was in part due to the fact that maybe students in that first semester signed up for 12 credits and then realized, I really need to do something else, so I'm going to catch up in the summer. So if our awareness efforts and 15 to Finish campaign pay off and we have more students getting those 30 credits in the academic year, then that might indicate a less reliance on summer. But the ability to spread the aid over that 12 months starts with the second cohort. So, that might lead us to think that we might see an increase. So we'll keep examining that issue. I think this in particular is one that we're not sure that the first cohort performance is going to indicate a longer term trend, but we're going to keep an eye on that. Our fourth conclusion related to banded tuition, and this will get a little wonky, but that's kind of who I am. So last August, you passed a resolution encouraging institutions to look at using banded tuition or charging the same amount of tuition for anywhere from 12 to 18 credits as a strategy to help more students graduate on time and take more courses. So we looked at our results through that lens. The chart on the left is actually, this is before the 1348 reforms. So we saw a big differential between, the four-year institution. We did four-year institutions, so we were looking apples to apples. So at four-year institutions with banded tuition, 67% of full-time students enrolled in 30-plus credits. For those that charge by the credit hour, it's 24.7%. Now, the institutions that currently have a banded tuition structure are, the flagship residential campuses. So there's certainly some bias in this and some factors other than simply the tuition structure that lead to this differential. But if we ask, does the tuition structure matter? If we look to the right, you see a different response you see a stronger response for the per credit hour institutions in terms of moving the numbers of students. So what this sort of indicates to us is that, in fact, students did perceive a financial barrier at the per credit hour institutions to taking more courses, and that in some ways the 1348 reforms sort of neutralize or at least compete with that disincentive by providing a financial incentive to do so. All that said, we think that validates the fact that tuition structure matters, and that if we want to see bigger results from these 1348 reforms, that moving to a banded tuition structure for everybody would be a step in the right direction. Conclusion 5 is that we looked at dual credit and AP, which we are allowing to count toward the 30, 60, 90 benchmarks. And we found that a significant number of students are coming in with dual credit and AP, and that it's helping them to meet the completion requirements. We also found one sort of unintended consequence of allowing dual credit and AP to count, and that relates to the acceleration incentive that we put into the Franco-Bannon program. So we had a couple of incentives, one being which students that hit 39 credits by the end of their first year, 78 by the end of their second year, that those students would be allowed to, once they hit that benchmark the following year, they would get an additional $1,300 in financial aid. But allowing dual credit to count toward that, obviously, if students come in with significant amounts of dual credit, 9 credits or more, and then they hit that 30 credit mark, they're really on time. They're at a pace of 30 per year, but because of that dual credit, they're sort of masquerading as an accelerated student. But if they're not taking that college level accelerated coursework, they're not going to be significantly graduating ahead of schedule. So we wanted to see to what extent we were sort of subsidizing true college level acceleration versus dual credit. And frankly, these results were pretty staggering that 90% of the students, 98% the previous academic year and 99% this year would meet that 39 credit mark because of dual credit, not because they were completing 39 credits in college. We're going to look at that issue, and I think we're tossing around some ideas about how to address that fact and really create the incentive for college level acceleration, not just sort of giving an extra $1,300 to people with a lot of dual credit. The reason that's important is that these students, if they're not truly accelerating in college, they're going to face a pretty steep funding cliff when they get to junior year. So if they get that extra $1,300 sophomore year, they don't get that 78 credit mark, then they're again in a position where relative to last year, now I have to come up with $1,300 more money out of my own pocket or out of loans, and facing, difficult choices about how to do that. So we learned a lot of lessons, and we are sharing those, both with, our partners around the state, but also with some of our national partners and other states that are considering doing something like this. I was actually pleased. I got a call from the University of Texas. I was just out talking with them over lunch, and they saw our report and were interested in pursuing something like this. And so I was able to say, here's what we did, here's why we did it, here's what was really good, and maybe here's what we would have done a little differently if we had a chance. So, being one of the first in the nation to do this means we get to sort of help others along the way and make it easier for them, and I'm excited to do that. So the lessons we learned, the students act on the advice they're given. I've been talking to a lot of advisors and financial aid staff with 15 to finish efforts and other things, and there seems to be, you always remember the one student that, you told them to do something, you said, here's what you should do, and they walked out of the office and did the exact opposite thing. We know that happens, we know that exists, but it really is the exception to the rule. So it's very clear to us that when students were told, you really should be signing up for and finishing 30 credits per year, they did it. And those that got the stronger message did so sort of changed that with a greater magnitude. Which leads into the second lesson, which is the higher the expectation, the better the outcomes. And we take this away from the differential in response between 21st century scholars and Frank O'Bannon. So again, I talked about sort of the fiscal and financial consequence for a 21st century scholar of not hitting that 30 credit mark is a drastic cut in financial aid or potentially a loss altogether of financial aid if they don't qualify for Frank O'Bannon based on their FAFSA filings. So clearly the financial incentive to do the 30, to get to that 30 credit mark was stronger for 21st century scholars. But also, the difference in messaging matters here too, where it was, for 21st century scholars, it was to stay in this program, you have to complete 30 credits by the end of this year. For Frank O'Bannon, in a lot of ways, it looks a little more like an incentive. So, relative to if you do 24 to 29, you'll get more money for completing 30. So the difference in messaging, we think, also matters. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier, we just, through the Scholars Program, through the Scholar Corps, through our high school outreach, all those efforts, there's just a more natural existing, communication network to those. Not that we exhausted any efforts on Frank O'Bannon's side. We used every tool in our toolbox to get the message across to Frank O'Bannon recipients as well. We just don't know who they are quite so early. The third lesson we took away is that student incentives also motivate colleges. This was really overwhelming and surprising and really fantastic information that we got back to see the, we know that performance funding drives institutions to change procedures and create new structures. And all those successes, when we tied some dollars to the students, the student dollars to their performance, it created a whole nother layer. So, it got to a different group of people on the campus. So, more of the academic advisors, financial aid offices, people that are talking, to the students, really started thinking more about the importance of taking and completing 30 credits and on-time graduation. So we saw a whole lot of efforts at the institutional level to make sure that students knew what they needed to do, why they needed to do it. And really, we saw a whole lot of activity around, data mining. Let's look at our data. Let's find these students that look like they're not going to meet this mark and either help them with encouragement or financial incentives and other things. We highlight ISU a lot for what they did with giving free tuition and discounted housing in the summer. Turns out that a lot of our institutions did very similar things. So, the fact that the institutions have changed some procedures, changed advising protocols in response to this is sort of a secondary benefit that wasn't necessarily what we were thinking about when we passed the law, but it's been a great benefit, and that's why we see the numbers moving the way we do. The fourth lesson, enrollment does not guarantee completion. This should be obvious on its face, but we would love to see, if we see a 21 percentage point jump in those enrolling in 30, to see a corresponding 21.6% percentage point jump in those completing. Not surprising, but getting students to sign up for a class is a whole lot easier than getting them to complete that class. So what that really compels us to do is to spend more efforts thinking about not just that sort of start of semester advising, but really looking at, tracking students through the semester. And, if you're going to drop a class, someone has to sign off on that. So is that person prepared to explain the financial implications of that to the student, before signing that paper? Or, I know we have a lot of early intervention programs that look at students who might be in danger of failing courses. So what is the outreach and advising to those students when they look like they're in danger of that? So we're going to continue to sort of look at that issue and work with the colleges and universities on that. The fifth is that passing the law was the easy part. I I spoke to financial aid directors over the couple weeks ago, and passing the law was the hard part for me, but for everybody else, it was the implementation of it, both from our staff's perspective and the colleges and universities. So, we had the sort of the dual challenges of awareness and making sure students knew what was going to happen and what they needed to do. But on the other side, there's a whole new data collection process. There's, IT systems need to be completely retooled. And so, making sure that, and our advice in this report is to any other state or college looking to do this is, work ahead, but, as you're working on the law itself, work ahead on a plan for awareness and IT implementation, and to whatever extent possible, leave yourself enough time, between the sort of the law and then the cohort that it affects, because even with one additional year, we could have had high school outreach that we didn't have, the opportunity for. So, and then we end sort of by calling on the fact that the completion efforts performed in tandem can increase our success rates. So, the policy side of me wants to be able to individually measure the impact of all the things we're doing, from 1348 to our 15 to Finish campaign to college coaching, and we just can't afford to roll these things out, a couple years at a time and do that. So what we do know is that all those things together have more power than each of them individually, and that the interaction effect with all these different efforts really magnify what any individual program or initiative would do on its own. So we talk about college coaching, we talk about 15 to Finish, and some of the other activities that we're doing, but it's, I guess this would lead to some advice for other states or systems that if you're going to do these things, you might want to do a whole bunch of things alongside it to whatever extent you can. I think you all have a copy of the report in front of you. So I guess with that, I will conclude and just ask if I can answer any questions.
Al?
Yeah, what do you call it? The banding?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're at 60% and the per credit charge is 30%. There's got to be, is there more of an explanation of it? I mean, that's dramatic.
Sure. Yeah, and there are a lot of reasons why that's true. It's
What are the other reasons? And which schools have banded, I don't know if I'm using the term.
Yeah, you are. It's IU Bloomington, Purdue West Lafayette, Ball State, and Indiana State. So again, it's the residential campuses that are taking more academic honors students and others. So there are a lot of factors that play into that, and we're not.
I have a little concern about the budgets that we encourage everybody to get banded. I have one of the days, but I'm not sure you want the conclusion of the banding causes better results. Maybe those who are selecting places to be better, the banding just comes to us.
Yes, I agree with that statement entirely. Where we really think that, where we see that the banding helps is in looking at the response between the cohort that wasn't affected and the cohort that was. So at the per credit hour institutions, you saw more improvement in that percent of students taking more, which to us indicates that, students are, without the 1348, sort of positive incentive to take more credits, they were facing a negative incentive sort of not to, and that it was going to cost them more money. So the fact that the financial, that disincentive is now in some way, or the numbers show that it is in some ways being neutralized by a financial incentive, that those things are sort of neutralizing, and that's why we think we're seeing more movement at those per credit hour institutions.
Any more questions? Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now you and Mr. Johnson are going to provide us information on the grid for our consideration and vote.
Yes, thank you. We'll keep this as brief as we can. Again, part of the reform passed in 2013 was to convert the way that we establish financial aid amounts from what used to be a relatively complicated formula to presenting the aid amounts in just a very easy to understand grid that's just based on what type of institution you're going to, and then what your EFC is within $500 buckets. So last year, you approved this grid that's in front of you right now. In current statute, it says that we are not to decrease the amounts of the grid, that if there's an issue with strain on the program, that would come out of the incentives, so what you see on the right-hand side. But we do not have any reliable information that would lead us to believe that we have enough money to increase the amounts right now. So we are, as staff, we are proposing that the grid remain the same as it was last year into this year, and that you approve that so that we can get the information to the schools. And Eugene is going to tell you a little bit about what happens, once these amounts are approved, sort of how that plays out in the financial aid community and how that relates, how that sort of gets into the hands of students.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
With the grid, once schools have a solid grasp on what amounts are going to be in the grid, it will allow schools to, for one, start giving students preliminary award letters. So those would be continuing students that are already on their campus, as well as newly admitted students, so they can get a leg up on getting them a concrete financial aid award package. Once a student files their FAFSA, each school they list on their FAFSA, up to 10 schools, gets a copy of what they call their ICER, their student information record, and they can take the information from that record and utilize that to develop a award letter that will be a combination of any federal aid and state financial aid that the student would qualify for. So with this grid, this will give schools the opportunity to establish O'Bannon eligibility amounts, as well as any incentives that they know of based off data that they can download from our office, reports on their academic honors or technical honors diploma status, and they will take that, put that into the student's award letter, and use that to offer a financial aid package to hopefully attract a student to their school. State financial aid being a big component of that financial aid award package.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, how does this, we've got this in front of us, how does this work? I kind of forgot.
So when a student files their FAFSA, they provide a lot of information, clearly information about themselves, their parents, and a primary source of information to establish their financial aid eligibility is their parent and student income. From that information, they get a number called the expected family contribution. So here at the top, you see the student's expected family contribution. And in our grid, we started at 0 and going from left to right in $500 buckets based off where their expected family contribution is and the type of school they're going to. That determines the eligibility for the O'Bannon grant. So for a student going to Rose-Hulman who has a 0 EFC, if they're Frank O'Bannon grant eligible, they file their FAFSA on or before March the 10th. They will receive a $7,400 base Frank O'Bannon award. And then on your right, you see the incentives. If they graduate from high school with an academic or technical honors diploma, as a freshman, they'll get an $800 incentive. And if they are a sophomore, junior, it's based on them getting a 3.0 GPA. So as that EFC increases, the amount of the O'Bannon grant based off their type of school will decrease. They come to a point, depending on which type of school they're at, that there's a 0 base award. And what that means is that they don't qualify for the O'Bannon grant just based off their FAFSA information. However, if they qualify for an incentive, they can receive that. So they could get the academic honors, associate degree, or accelerated incentive. And then going again to the furthest part of the grid on your right, students hit a point, depending on which type of school they're going to be attending, where they will not qualify under Commission's needs measure for the O'Bannon grant.
Which is the O'Bannon on this sheet?
This entire sheet is the O'Bannon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is the O'Bannon, so.
Okay.
You can think of it as sort of a base salary plus commission.
Yeah.
So it's, you sort of,
And
everybody gets the.
Behind these numbers is the qualification of the parent to determine how much they're in that EFC.
Right.
Yeah. I see.
Yep.
Correct.
So basically today, Mr. Chairman, we're asking you to support our recommendation that we keep the grid the same as it was at the last time you voted on it.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? All those in favor indicated by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All opposed, same sign. And thank you very much, and thank you for the excellent explanation. Well, you all, that brings us to our information items. You'll see in Roman numeral 4 of our packet. And then, well, you'll find that on page 23 of our agenda book. Is there any old business for consideration? Any new business? I will note that our next meeting will occur on March the 12th, in 2015. If there is no other information, this meeting's adjourned.